it would probably not be relevant right this moment. So no slides, because Chuck Schumer can't even make a slide right now. There's no slides can be made. What I can report, and I think that most of you obviously know, is that the infrastructure bill did pass, and the funding in it is on the lead side is mostly dedicated, obviously, to lead service line replacement. There is a lot of advocacy going around in the federal community to ensure that the money that is earmarked for that has some good fencing language around it to make sure it actually gets spent on replacement. We all know how these big buckets of money can have a label, and then it gets pulled out to do a survey and pulled out to do a study and pulled out. But so there's a great deal of intentionality to make sure that it's actually used for brick and mortar work. EPA announced today that they were moving much of the money that they are doing in the water space into the state revolving fund program that I think lots of states already have a pretty good working relationship with using. And so hopefully that'll be able to move more quickly than creating new programs or new structures that could take years to get up and running. We are also following Build Back Better, the bill that has a significant amount of lead funding around paint as well, which obviously is a huge concern for us, since paint is a far more likely way that children receive exposure to lead. And we'd like them to have it in no way at all, but lead is an important, paint is an important area for us. We work directly with CDC, HUD, and EPA in their program areas, as well as do work with Congress. And so we do know that the language that went into Build Back Better was deeply scrutinized and authored by HUD, so that they are very much making sure that the money that will move through that bill, knock on wood, will be able to go directly to programs that they know are useful and helpful. And so that has a lot of promise. There is some conversation about that potentially being negotiated and voted on the 12th and 13th of this month, but many dates have been offered. So if you are the betting kind, that's not where I'd spend my quarters. So we are also the mainstay and the bread and butter of the way that the programs that you all utilize, if you utilize federal programs, is through the traditional appropriations process. At this point, we obviously have some very significant plus up numbers for 2022. If we actually get the numbers that the House and Senate have put out, we would be in very good shape for most of the programs that you access through any of those agencies. However, at this point, we are in the process of identifying what will probably be a short-term continuing resolution, which would go from the end of this week till mid-February. That's a placeholder and would not have much impact in the work that you do. I think the real concern is if we were to actually get a full year continuing resolution, which is one of the discussions that is in play. I would say for the last 3 or 4 years, the programs that we care most about in the lead remediation space have continually done fairly well and improved every year, partly because the past administration's budget proposals were not very impactful to members of Congress. Members of Congress had their own priorities, and they put out numbers that improved each year in EPA, CDC, and HUD programs that work in the lead space. So if we were to have a continuing resolution, we would not get an increase, which, as we all know, because of the cost of living, is a cut, but it wouldn't be a devastating, it wouldn't be a slash to the budgets at hand. However, we are really hoping that in February, they'll take the opportunity to move forward and identify what the funding is that is being proposed for 2022 and work out a negotiation that moves us into that new space, because the numbers that we are looking at for 2022 that are proposed right now on House and Senate are very good and would be very, would have real impact, especially layered in with the infrastructure work and the Build Back Better work. We would have, you know, a solid 5 years of work on lead that we haven't seen, I would say, in our lifetimes. So that is exciting. I would also say the other thing that I would say as a positive note, when things always seem a little bleak, is that in all these negotiations about Build Back Better, there's a lot of fighting about what does Joe Manchin think, what do people want in the bill, what do they don't. Nobody's talking about the lead money. Like, that is not on the table at all. Like, that is sort of a foregone conclusion. So in that respect, we should be appreciative that we're not actually the hot topic, and that the number that's in the bill is most likely at this point not going to be tinkered with. They already kind of negotiated it when the House and the Senate kind of got to mutual numbers, and we did take a bit of a hit. We started at 8 billion and we were down to 5 billion, but once again, we haven't seen that number in our lifetime. So it would be a very exciting impact if we can see those numbers come through. So I'm cautiously optimistic that at least we will get a new appropriation number that will be significantly better for us, and that we also have hope that there will some part of Build Back Better will come through, and that the lead aspect of it will remain fairly intact. Do people have any questions they want to ask about that whole presentation?
So I just want to make sure I confirm what you said, Darcy. As of right now, the numbers for 2021 and 2022, the votes for the House and Senate are looking pretty good for us. And also right now we're currently at a negotiation of, you said 5 billion?
5 billion. It goes into a variety of programs. There's a certain amount of money that's programmatic, and there are certain amounts that go specifically to public housing, et cetera. I'm happy to send the breakdown over to you, Mara, to circulate with folks to see how that money is broken down at this point.
I would love to have that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that would be great if you could send that over. And then Darcy, I know you said that things are looking pretty solid regarding lead and the funding, but is there any need for any supportive action here in the state of Michigan? You know, we do have a lot of advocates on the phone. Is there anything that we could be doing right now to be helpful? Call
all the friends that you have in West Virginia and talk to them about how they need to call their member. You have awesome members of Congress. You are killing it. There's no reason you shouldn't constantly say to them, we need Build Back Better. We need an actual 2022 appropriation. We do not want a continuing resolution. I think all of your members are probably going to answer the phone like this. We absolutely agree with you, but there's no reason that you shouldn't continue that that outreach, especially because members love to be able to go to the floor and say, my people are, the phone is ringing off the hook. I don't know what to do. I'm like, people are just, this has to get done. And so there's no such thing as too much advocacy, because it really, we have got to move forward on a 2022 budget, and we need to move forward on Build Back Better. So there's just absolutely, please keep doing your outreach and your contact.
This is kind of a follow-up to that. I know in the past NCHH has had like templates and scripts. Do you currently have any of those materials, so that way folks kind of have everything they need when they are getting ready to reach out to legislators?
Writing it on my list right
Amazing.
here. Send
Perfect.
scripts. Yes, we will
I'm
definitely.
wondering. I'm sorry, I was wondering, I also, because I'm a part of a U Plan group too, and they're doing some campaign things right now too, and they have a QR code or a link where you can have signatures and kind of collect while you're on the go out talking with people. Is that do you guys have something like that maybe in place to help?
We don't, because we don't actually do very much field grade organizing. Like, that's what you all are really good at. We are the people who are kind of taking your message to the federal offices, but anything that you sent forward to us, we would be happy to relay to members and use it as supportive materials for all of our outreach on the Hill.
Any other questions for Darcy? All
Well, I
right.
have on here that I will be sending the breakdowns for the Build Back Better and scripts for outreach on Build Back Better and appropriations. So thank you all. You represent a huge swath of middle America that is so important in these conversations. And we really can't do the work that we do without all of you doing the work on the ground that makes it matter.
Thanks again for joining us tonight, Darcy. And it sounds like we'll be in touch. And folks, if any questions do come up later today or during our meeting tonight, we can always share those with Darcy, and I'm sure she'll be happy to answer any other questions that might come up. But with that, Darcy, thanks again. We're going to start talking about state level stuff. So if you'd like to join us, great. But if not, thanks again for joining us. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to start sharing my screen. I have some slides, and like I said before, folks, if at any time you have questions or if something pops up in your head, feel free to raise your hand, chat it out, or you all have the opportunity to unmute yourself, so do that as well. This is really supposed to be more of kind of like a discussion, kind of just to talk about what's going on here at the state level and what are some different actions we all can be taking to make sure we get some good things passed when it comes to lead here. So before I jump into what's been going on in Lansing in the past week, I wanted to share a bit of background with all of you regarding the Filter First bills and their importance. So unfortunately, lead is commonly found in the drinking water in schools across the country and here in the state of Michigan. This has to do with the fact that plumbing systems are not always being consistently used. For example, during seasonal breaks and weekends when the schools are not open and the water is stagnant in the school's plumbing systems. So this results in a reduction in the effectiveness of the corrosion controls meant to prevent lead contamination. And currently there is no federal mandate that requires testing school drinking water for lead. And it's also important to remember that testing school drinking water for lead is costly. And even if tests come back positive for the presence of lead, that really only confirms lead exposure and does nothing to actually address the problem. So this brings us to the solution of Filter First. Drinking water fountains or bottle fillers with filters that reduce impurities and remove lead particulates ensure a supply of clean, lead-free drinking water. So here's an example of a unit that could be used. So you can replace old water fountains, you can retrofit existing fountains, or these can also be installed independently. And one of the things is to ensure adequate access, schools install one station per 100 students enrolled. So some school districts, including Ann Arbor, Birmingham, Dearborn, Detroit, and Royal Oak, have already installed filtered drinking water stations here in the state of Michigan. But that means that there are a lot of school districts that have not already had the opportunity to install drinking water stations. Which brings us to Senate Bills 184 and 185. These bills were first introduced in late February by State Senators Curtis Vanderwall out of Ludington and Jim Ananek out of Flint. Both bills would provide guidance and funds for schools and daycares to install and maintain equipment like filtered faucets so children can access drinking water without the risk of lead exposure. The bill's first hearing took place back in October, and the second just this week on Tuesday, where the bills were approved by the Environmental Quality Committee, and their next step is a full Senate vote. But as you can probably guess, installing and maintaining the hydration stations will take funding. So Senate Bill 565 would provide funding for drinking water, including specifically $85 million for Filter First. The Appropriations Committee unanimously passed the bill after yesterday's hearing. So this bill's next step is also a full Senate vote. Which kind of just brings me to the next steps. So as a next step, please keep a lookout for an action email from us. This will be a letter that you can send to your senator via email, urging them to support the Filter First bills and ensure safe drinking water in schools. We currently don't have a particular date where the bills will actually be voted on in the full Senate. But before that happens, we'll be sure to let folks know so you can send out those letters. And then hopefully, if the bills pass the Senate, then they'll be sent over to the House for consideration, which means there will be some opportunities for engagement with some representatives as well to ensure that they're supportive of these bills. So I'm going to stop there to see if there's any particular questions regarding Filter First before I start to talk about the 2021 lead bill package. Do folks have any questions or comments, anything they want to share before we move on?
Can you repeat one more time? Just summarize Bill 184 and 185. I know 586 is more so needed for funding, but can you specify again what those ones were again?
Oh, sure. Yep. So these are specifically two bills, and what they will do is they provide guidance and funds for schools and daycare centers throughout the state of Michigan to install and maintain the filtered hydration stations.
This is like, I just wonder, I haven't followed this particular thing that closely. How many kids have been lead poisoned by water in the school?
Oh, that's a good question. Like, I don't know if anyone else on the call right now has the particular numbers. I don't have them in front of me, but I know that's something that one of the coalitions that we're a part of, that's a question that we've been getting from some legislators, and we've been pulling some information. Tanya, I know you were on the call yesterday as well. Do you remember that number offhand?
No, I don't. I can go back and look through the notes, and if I can find it, I'll put it in the chat in just a couple of minutes.
Great, thank you. Anything else that folks would like to cover regarding Filter First? All right, well, if anything comes up, feel free to chat it out, or, you know, we will have a lot of time for discussion. So if something pops in your head, just feel free to mention it. But what we really wanted to take some time to discuss tonight is the 2021 lead bill package. So many of you are, oh, looks like we have something in the chat. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, perfect. Thanks. Rebecca chatted out a link with some more details regarding the bills. So the other bill, the package of bills we have updates on is one that many of you are already familiar with, and that's the 2021 lead bill package being spearheaded by Rep. Hood. Now, back in September, many of us met with legislators and let them know a bill package was coming, and it was finally introduced in October. So the package includes 9 bills that cover everything from updating language to fall in line with CDC guidance, defining safer abatement practices, and a few that align with the platform of policies all of you who participated in the lead impacted families training created this past summer. So this includes requiring a lead inspection on homes built before 1978 prior to the sale or transfer. So as you can see here, these are actually 2 graphics that were provided to us from Rep. Hood's office. These are things that we'll be sharing with all of you. They're great that if you want to be posting on social media, you can always use those as your graphics. This might be a little hard to read, but this is the full lead bill package. So as you can see, it includes House Bills 5413 through House Bill 5423. And you can see all of the sponsors of the bills. This is a bipartisan bill package, so we do have some Democrat and some Republican sponsors, which is always great to see, because here in the state of Michigan, you really need some bipartisan support to really get anything moving. So kind of the next step for the lead bill package is a hearing that's set to take place 1 week from today. The House Health Policy Committee will be hosting a hearing at 10:30 a.m. on December 9th. Prior to the hearing, the Michigan Environmental Council will be hosting a webinar, actually taking place tomorrow, to discuss the lead bill package with Rep. Hood herself. If folks are interested in participating in that webinar live, or if you would like to receive a recording of it, you can register for the event with the link that I'm about to put in the chat box. So like I said, I know that not everyone will probably be able to actually participate in that webinar live tomorrow, but if you do register, they will be sharing the recording for that as well. Oh, and Jamila, I see that you're asking about slides. So yes, we will be sharing the slides from tonight. We'll also be sharing the recording. And then we also have a couple links that we've been sharing in the chat box that we'll also be sharing via email.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So like I just mentioned, one of the next steps for folks that they can take is to participate in tomorrow's webinar with Rep. Hood to learn more about the bills. But her office has also kind of shared a tool, what I would call a toolkit of different advocacy actions. The advocacy materials are up now on the LIFT website and can be accessed using this link as well. We'll also be sharing this stuff via email because I know it's a lot to try and hold on to all of the links. Oh, perfect. Rebecca already put in the chat. Thank you. So one of the first action items that folks can get involved with is by posting about the bills on social media. As many of you know, social media is a great way to share information with others, get the word out about the upcoming hearing, and gain some more supporters. And like I said, one of the things that was shared with us are the graphics you can see here that shares a little bit more about the lead bill package. And those are always great things that you can use on social media. Another option is a draft letter to members of the Health Policy Committee. Rep. Hood's office has shared a draft letter with us. You can find that on using the link. And a letter is a great opportunity to show members of the committee that there's strong support for the bills. And lastly, we also have a script that folks can use if they're interested in reaching out to offices directly via phone call. Each legislator has staffers who are in charge of taking calls from citizens. So calling an office is another way that we can urge legislators to show support for the bills. It's also a really nice opportunity to reach out to bill sponsors and thank them. A lot of times legislators are hearing from people, you know, and it's complaints. So it's always nice when they hear from someone saying, hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate this work. And it's also something that they can bring up to other legislators and say, hey, I'm hearing from people. They're really appreciative of us for introducing these bills. We got to make sure that that we push them through and make them into law. So that's really brings us to the discussion piece for tonight. We really just wanted to hear from all of you the ways in which you'd like to participate in gearing up for next week's hearing, actions you've already been thinking about taking. I know we have a couple different organizations on the call tonight. Are there things that folks are already thinking about when it comes to gearing up for next week's hearing? And are there ways in which that you know, we could all be collaborating and showing support for the bills?
Mara, this is Mary Sue. I just got an email from Tom Stevenson in Rep. Hood's office. And one thing they'd like, and maybe you can facilitate and get this out to people, is you can turn in a card the day of, and he will turn in a card for any of us saying we support it. So if we email him and say, here's my name, here's my organization, here's why I support it, he will turn those in at the day of the hearing. And the other thing he said was if we could focus on sending a letter to the chair and members of committee, one support letter, and we get that to him and to the committee clerk, he will make sure that they get it and it's read into the record. So I can send you his email, Mara, and then you can send that email out to everybody.
Perfect. Yeah, that would be great. And I guess one thing that I'll mention, I plan on attending the hearing. So if, you know, folks could also send me and I can make sure that a card is put in. But I think that's great to hear that Rep. Hood's office is offering those opportunities. Has anyone else been thinking of ways in which that they'd like to engage next week with the hearing coming up?
We're working with our DLED parents in Detroit, and several of them are signing on to. We did our own support letter. We modified the one that Rep. Hood sent out, which is quite long. We modified it down, hopefully to one page. And so the DLED parents are going to sign that and we're going to send it in.
That sounds great. Parents for Healthy Homes or Healthy Homes Coalition of West Michigan, has there been any discussion about what folks in Grand Rapids are thinking about doing for the hearing?
Well, our policy person is actually out of town on a Phoenix trip for our U-Plan group right now. So she actually, before she left, I know they had a meeting with Kurt, I believe it was. And they went over some strategy tactics. So I know she's got some things in her back pocket ready to go for when she comes back in town.
Great, glad to hear it. And so Mary Sue mentioned that DLED is putting in a support letter. Is that something that folks in this group would be interested in kind of doing our own?
Sure.
I know it's always helpful.
Especially because we represent a wider, DLED is important for Detroit, but we at this table are from all over the state. So yeah, I think we would all be happy to sign on if you did a letter.
So Mary Sue, can you send them the letter so that they can share it with anybody that wants to see what we've done, and then they can imitate our letter if they want to?
Sure.
Yeah, that would be great. I think that'll probably be something Rebecca, Tanya, and I will have to put our heads together early next week, and then that way we can get it out to folks in time. Oh, and then Tanya actually just put in the chat. So Tanya, I'll let you share really quickly, going back to Lake's question.
So I have kind of a non-answer. It seems that the exact numbers or percentages of kids that are lead poisoned from drinking water at schools and daycares is largely unknown. And I think my theory is that it's because that's kind of hard to pinpoint, I would assume, or maybe just nobody's done the research, I don't know. But we do know that EPA says that drinking water accounts for 20% of all lead exposure. And Health and Human Services says that kids absorb 40 to 50% of the lead in an oral dose. So the 40 to 50% of the lead that's in the water that they drink. So there are some numbers, but I don't have the exact answer. Sorry. But if we find it, or if we come across anything else relevant, we'll share it with you.
Thank you for pursuing that.
So I see a couple
Tanya,
other folks. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mary Sue.
Tanya, those numbers that you just cite, is that something you have citations for and you could send it out to us?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Thank you.
So I see a couple of folks have joined us. Welcome. We're currently discussing what action items folks plan on or would like to be a part of regarding the lead bill package's upcoming hearing that's taking place on Thursday of next week. So currently, we shared a couple of the different items that Rep. Hood's office has been sharing around social media and letters. Mary Sue has mentioned that DLED is working on a letter that they are going to be submitting. There seems to be a general consensus that folks in this group would also like to do some sort of sign-on letter. And then if folks are also interested, Tom and Rep. Hood's office has mentioned that he would be, if you are interested in putting in a card of support, he can do that on your behalf at the meeting on Thursday.
And then Mara, our policy person actually just joined in. Sarah, can you advise about the meeting with Kirk for strategizing for next week?
Yeah, hi everybody. We're currently sitting in an airport. But yeah, so Dana and I met with Kurt Rapart, and he is told us that there's some funding that has been opened up from the infrastructure bill that is going to be used as a it's kind of like a perpetual funding thing where it gives people money to fix their houses, and then they get to pay it back in small doses up to 2 years, and then that money drops, like then that loan drops off and it gets fully funded. So there's that one opportunity. The other opportunity is that there is going to be a point person appointed to be like, I guess, be point person for lead in Grand Rapids. So, and they are going to be tasked with changing policy around lead in the lead ordinances in Grand Rapids. And the third thing that we know is that our group needs to really get mobilized at the city council meetings, because they're looking at changing those ordinances, or we need to push the city council members to change those ordinances by July of 2022. So that's the timeline that's been given to us by Kurt. And so we need everybody's help on this call to really mobilize and get that done. I think that's everything. Is Dana on here? Can Dana elaborate if possible? I don't think Dana's here. Okay.
No, I
so
don't
that-
think Dana was able to make it tonight.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So that's basically my turn in for that.
Thank you, Sarah. I know you guys are in the airport. Thanks for the update right quick.
Yeah, and Sarah, if there's any other follow-up regarding that or more information, if you could just share it to the full group, I think that would be really helpful. Perfect, thank you. Yeah, and so is there anything else that folks have been thinking about, or now that you know that, there's kind of like this small advocacy toolkit that's been shared by Rep. Hood's office, that things that folks are thinking about that they would like to do prior to the hearing, or maybe, of course, there's probably going to be discussion after the hearing as well of kind of like follow-up and next steps.
So, hey, I have a question about the hearing.
Sure.
Are we invited to go, and what do we need to bring to that to really strengthen the, I want to bring a lot of data. I want to be able to speak to this, and so that they don't have any questions, we just apply them with information. So how do we gather that information? What do we do to, show up in that way?
That's a great question. And I can start off, but I'm sure there's folks on this call who also have ideas. One of the main things, so we were talking about this, I think it was a little before you hopped on, Sarah, is that one of the things that folks can do to show support is to actually put in a card, because those will be counted. You can also actually put on the card, if you're there in person, if you would like the opportunity to speak, because they will allow for that. You can also submit written testimony, which is maybe something that might be helpful, especially if you have a lot of content and information you'd like to share with committee members, because usually you're kind of have a shorter amount of time that you're actually able to speak, to make sure that they have enough time for everyone's testimony. So I think those are some great options. Does anyone else have any other suggestions?
Is there because when we did the LIFT class, we briefly talked about communication, but we never touched on testimony before. Is there a LIFT opportunity where we can do a class like that on how to write that appropriately?
I before the hearing, hey, Rebecca, turned late. Before the hearing next week, I don't know if we're going to have an opportunity to do something like that, but I think that would be a good idea, because you really, if you go in person and you present, you only have a few minutes. I think it's usually like 3 minutes. So you have to be really concise, and then they'll ask you questions and it can go on, but you should plan for just 3 minutes to get things out. What we can do in the interim is send a note to Mara or I if you want to work on testimony, and we will help you write it and craft it. The other thing just to keep in mind is we can also just send out to the whole list like the email of the clerk for the committee. So that's who you would email your resources and your written testimony over to. And even if so like when I gave testimony a couple weeks ago for the filter first bill that I think maybe y'all talked about earlier. And so I wrote the testimony, and then I also went and I spoke. And so I knew I only had a few minutes to speak, but I could say more in my written testimony. So thinking about it that way, that you can have a lot of facts and figures in your written testimony, but really it's that what we did talk about in LIFT is that impassioned story. So why is this really important to do this is really critical, so that they hear those stories from community members, from family members in particular. And then you back that up with the facts and the figures. So that'll be key there.
Okay, so Rebecca, could you send your testimony so that can we can use that as like a template sort of?
Yeah, and I actually, typically I wear the hat of someone who's this is their job and facts and figures, but with the filter first, my son, he was in a school that had high lead levels in the drinking water there. So I wrote it as a parent. So I'm happy to share that.
Thank you. That would be very cool.
Great. So it sounds like there's a lot of interest in doing a couple of different outreach things. Mary Sue, I know one of the next steps is you said that you would share the information that you received from Tom Stevenson, and that way folks have the information that if they would like a card put in at the hearing in support, that you can reach out to Tom for that. You can also reach out to me for that. I will be attending the hearing, so if folks aren't able to make it, I can always put in a card of support for you as well. Becca and myself, we will share around some testimony. We did put in the links regarding the materials that Rep. Hood's office shared in the chat box, but we also will share that around along with the slides and the recording from tonight. Am I missing anything? I feel like that's a lot, but is there anything else that folks are thinking of?
Mara, just one question. When we send to either you or Tom our information for the card, do we put like a sentence or two about why we support, or is it just name and group?
Yep, you just put name, you can put group. A lot of times it's just a little, it's been a while since I filled out a card. It's been a while since I've been at a hearing in person, but it's usually like you kind of check a box where it's in, if you're either in support or not in support of it.
Okay.
So it's very simple.
So
But you can always email it, Mary Sue, if you want to put in that sentence or paragraph of why you support it. Emailing that to the clerk will have it filed as official written testimony, and that'll show up.
okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, it is just to support, oppose, or neutral.
All right, well, I think with that, it sounds like a few of us have some marching orders and we'll be sharing around some more information. Obviously, if there are other questions that come up, or if folks have some other materials that they want to share with the group of things that they're getting ready to kind of gear up for the hearing that's taking place next week, please share them along to the whole group. But with that, if there isn't anything else for tonight, we can close a little bit early and let folks have a few more minutes of their evening back. But it was great seeing everyone.
You too.
All right, well, with that, then we'll close out for the night. Sounds like everyone has a lot of work and we have done a lot of work. I think everyone's pretty excited. Back in September when we were talking about having an advocacy day and Rep. Hood said that there was a package of bills coming. It's really nice to see where we're at now in December. And I think a lot of that really has to do with some hard work that all of you have been doing. So kudos to all of you, and we'll keep fighting the good fight.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody.
Everybody, good to see
Have a
you.
good night.
Bye.